Welcome to the Tangle with Kyle Ridley. Happy Pride Month. We're continuing to celebrate our LGBTQIA community, LGBTQIA plus community. And today I have a wonderful guest, Guy Branum. I've been a fan of his for a couple decades now, ever since those Chelsea Lately days. And we're slowly going through all those comedians that were featured on that massively successful show that really did so much for comedians. I've had Sarah Colonna on, I've had Ross Matthews on, Chris Frangiola, and now we have Guy Branum, also a celebrated author. I read his book about 8 years ago, My Life as a Goddess. Really recommend that. But he has been busy touring as a stand-up comedian and writing for several TV shows, including the brilliant Hacks, which he has won an Emmy for. And he also co-wrote that classic Montecito episode that was in this final season with Cherry Jones and Leslie Bibb when Hannah and Jean Smart, their characters, go to visit the lesbians because she wants the Carol Burnett outfit. One of the funniest episodes of the season. I mean, what can you say about Hacks? Brilliant all the way around. So, of course, we talk about that. We talk about his new show that he is taking to the Edinburg Fringe Festival, and he is going to be there for about a month, and he still hasn't booked a place yet. So I'm curious to see where he ends up. He also gets candid about gay life, as we always talk about here, building community. We also touch a little bit on politics and some of his comedian friends who have branched into political comedy or made some comments that he doesn't so much agree with. But then we also talk about how we maintain friendships with people who have good hearts and who we know are good people. So that's a little tease for you. And yeah, this was just a wonderful conversation all around. He's also doing an Instagram series about what the old gays remember, trying to teach the youth of today. I really appreciate that because we were raised with so much education, my generation, and I don't know if the younger generations are doing their research, but we hope. Always hope-filled. As far as what I have been tangled in, I just spent the weekend in Nashville, one of my favorite cities. I've been a few times, and I went there to celebrate 2 years with my partner, my domestic partner, and we just bar hopped and listened to the musicians because every single bar opens at like 10 a.m., and they all have stellar musicians all around. So we did the Broadway loop and ate some wonderful food. We walked the bridge, of course, and we just stay right off of Broadway in the Cambria Hotel. Shout out to them because I've stayed there a couple times, and they're always a delight. We also made a couple friends along the way, as we do, because we're pretty outgoing when we're out of town and like to just meet people to hang out with. So we met a really cool guy who we got to go to his hotel and hang out in his pool and hot tub. He had some pretty sweet digs. It was very nice of him to welcome us. And then, of course, we did a little bit of the gay bars. We went to Tribe. They had Singo. So it's like bingo, but it's singing. And one of the rounds was the women of the 90s. So right up my alley. Of course, I was in love with every single song. So they play music instead of announcing B7, B12 or whatever. And then you cross those songs off on your card. Didn't win, but I had a really good time. And then we also went to the historic Lipstick Lounge. We took an Uber there, and it's a lesbian bar. Brandi Carlile sometimes shows up there and does karaoke. We did a couple songs. I did my go-tos, Push by Matchbox 20 and You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette. I love that bar. Everyone there is just delightful, and the managers are sweet. And if you haven't been to Nashville, when you go, make sure you make a trip to the Lipstick Lounge. Well worth your time. Didn't really do anything historical as far as museums. I have been to the Country Hall of Fame Museum. Didn't go to the Grand Ole Opry. Maybe next time. Still need to make it to the Ryman, but there wasn't anyone performing that I was interested in seeing, but walked by it many times. And then we went to our favorite restaurant there, which we always make sure to stop by at least once. And that's going to tie into my Tangled song of the week. So stay tuned for that after this interview. Because as you know, a lot of famous country artists have restaurants and bars on Broadway Strip. And stay tuned to see who is my favorite. You probably have a guess based on who I've spoken about before. Love this artist. And we share a birthday. What else? This coming weekend is Pride Weekend in DC, so I have a pretty full calendar. I also have a full house of dogs, so I will be balancing my time at home, snuggling my furry friends, and then going out to the city and having drinks and dancing and just a good old time for Pride. And I'm already tired thinking about it, but hey, it's once a year and we have to celebrate, right? I'm allowing some rest, so I'm going out like Thursday, resting a bit on Friday, going out Saturday, resting Sunday. We'll see. I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. anymore working in TV. So it's a bit more doable. Looking forward to it. As always, I appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Leave a rating if you're so inclined. That really helps. I've gotten a nice boost lately with some of the social media clips. And one I posted the other day The one with Dan Savage is getting a lot of traction. And then one I just posted yesterday with Lisa Traeger, who I had on my podcast last year, but she was speaking about some of the podcast bros and comedians that are MAGA and how they try to get into politics. And she called one of them out last year that is now getting a lot of attention for attending that shameful event outside of the White House this week. I'm sure you can guess who I'm speaking about. With check my Instagram if not, and you'll see who she called out a year ago. She knew it first. All right, my friends, enjoy this conversation with the delightful, educational, funny, hilarious author, comedian, podcaster, host, writer, Emmy winner, Guy Branum. First, happy Pride Month. And with that, I want to start with the new series you've been covering on your Instagram, What the Old Gays Remember. Can you just talk about how that came about and the evolution of it? Because it's been pretty regular and I think you're teaching a lot of the youth.
So, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, another comic, a younger comic had been like, "Hey, do you want me to make videos for you?" And I was like, "Sure." And I had been doing man on the street videos in West Hollywood with her, just sort of like asking people questions and that kind of thing. She's a little straight girl, Tori Piskin, very funny comic. And I stopped her so frequently to explain some aspect of queer culture that I thought it was necessary that she understand, that she was like, you should do a thing called like What the Old Gays Remember. So very much her idea. And then we did a couple of them. We were just in her living room and she was like, what's the first sex tape you remember? And that one didn't do well. But it was just a couple of things and having me riff on like pop culture topics from the past. And then, people responded to it and it was like, this is fun and I really like doing it. Being condescending is like one of my safe places.
You are a few years older than me. I'm 41. So one thing that I don't remember is coming out before the internet, because I came out around 17 and that was at the dawn of the internet, like 97, 98. So can you just talk about your coming out? Because it was pre-internet. Was it like you had to go to the bars? There were even, ads in the newspaper. People don't remember this. So what was your coming out like, seeking out community?
I also do not remember coming out before the internet because I didn't come out until after my first year of law school. And I really do think the internet was such a watershed for queer America. It just made it impossible to stay closeted. It made it impossible to like not investigate other people's minds. Before that moment, it really was so easy to feel trapped in your own head and incapable of communicating about it. And like the internet made it possible to explore these things without putting yourself in the kind of jeopardy and danger that existed before. And I do feel very self-conscious about the fact that I wasn't one of those brave people who was able to do it without that safety. Simultaneously, like I come from a little rural farm town that was very conservative. Nobody was coming out of the closet there. But also, I spent 4 years at Berkeley, during which, like there was a very open and welcoming queer community, and I didn't understand how I could fit into it. And part of it was that I needed like 4 years of being chilled out about these things to like start thinking honestly about myself. But also, to your point, it really was just the internet. It was the ability to explore these things like anonymously and then chill out about it.
Were you immersed in the chat rooms right away?
It's kind of funny because I feel like I came out, it's like I wasn't doing that much on the internet other than just like finding very slowly downloading porn and like a little bit of access to it. It took me a little while after coming out to like find chat rooms and find social stuff to be able to engage with other people. Like it was a safer playing ground than a gay bar. Like I did spend sort of like 6 months before I ever went to a bar, just sort of like online, figuring out how I fit into things. And the other thing is like, I have never looked like a gay guy is supposed to look. And so understanding how I fit into this world was an extra step of a journey.
Do you find younger generations to be interested in gay history? Because I've spoken with people, our generation, we were raised with a lot of history, but I think a lot of it was fear-based, like everything that happened in the 80s. And do you find younger generations really doing the research to know what it was like in the 90s and prior?
Well, it's very interesting. Like there are a lot of energies at odds with each other. One of the things that was formative for me was like 2 years ago, I had just shot a short film and we were done and everybody was sort of like drinking and swimming around in the pool in Palm Springs where we had shot it. And then a like guy in his 20s swam up and was like, could you tell me about the AIDS crisis? And just sort of realizing that this young gay person didn't know aspects of history that it was necessary for him to understand for his own health and the health of his community. It really sort of made that clear to me. And I think like gay people have always loved knowing and understanding culture. So I think there can be that hunger to like know the references and know what's going on. But I also think there can be this smug idea of youth and sort of like, oh, that stuff is for old people. It is irrelevant now. It means nothing to me. And I definitely had that attitude towards any number of things. And it took me time to sort of like gain the humility to understand that the people who came before me were smart and they had a lot of things that they understood. And also, I think people of my gay generation are very aware of the fact that our intergenerational contact was limited by the fact that everybody died between 1983 and 1994. You know, that there was a generation of people whose wisdom and history and expertise was lost.
And in the 90s, knowing I was a gay kid, I came out in the early 2000s. I was one of those people who, I guess, internalized homophobia. I just didn't see myself. It was very one-dimensional representation in the media, and I wasn't doing my history to really learn about generations before me. Did you have any North Stars in your youth?
There was a moment where my best friend from college, before I was out, she was talking to her dad about me or something like that. And he had met me and he said, this is a man who is also Jewish, but he referred to me as that fat queer Jew. And it seemed so like essentializing and scary. And like, we were having this conversation after I came out. And it was just like, is that all I am? And then I realized that that's what Harvey Fierstein is. And so I was like, that's not so bad. That isn't such a bad place to be. But I also think, you know, I had a sixth grade teacher who was never explicitly out of the closet. He lived next door to us. He was a bookish single man. And, I did see queer people around me. My mom worked at a flower shop for two men, and like having it explained to me, my parents were scared that I would embarrass them. I would say something embarrassing. So when I was like 4 or 5, they were like, these two people are married like a man and a woman are married. And though they said many homophobic things about that couple and called them terrible names, the fact that someone explained to me when I was 4 or 5 that a man and a man could be married and have a home, like that was helpful. These are North Stars. Like one of the reasons that we are such active consumers of culture is because you don't see yourself. And so you're constantly searching for the things that could give you some sense of bearings to understand where you exist in this culture.
About crushes, any celebrity crushes as a kid? And then I always like to ask current.
I like, God knows the like roided out Arnold Schwarzenegger He-Man-y 80s definitely impacted my sexual tastes. Mario Lopez appearing for the first time on my television was a revelation. But when it came to like more emotional crushes, I like did not let myself do that until I came out of the closet. And it like really hit me like a ton of bricks the first time I had emotions that were backing up sexual desire. And it was really scary. When current celebrity crushes, I mean, could we have gotten something better than Connor Story and Hudson Williams? Like, but also the fact that Connor Story, and also Francois Arnault, and the fact that Connor and Francois are queer. For such a long time, you had to like look wistfully at the dazzling straight guys who were playing gay and just be so sad that they would never be one of ours. And like, we got 2 out of 3. That ain't bad.
I mean, yeah, Francois and Connor, I just think he'll win an Oscar someday. So talented. Brilliant, brilliant. All right. So you've been in comedy for 25 plus years. You've been performing. You've been in writing rooms. Can you talk about the evolution of LGBTQ acceptance in stand-up and writing rooms, and where are we now compared to where you started off?
That's a great question. I remember watching The Daily Show, like truly maybe before I started stand-up, and Michael Patrick King was talking to Jon Stewart about a road gig that they had done early on, and I had this weird sort of moment of like, wait, why didn't I ever get to see that guy stand up? And like in the United States, in a way that is like particular, it's not true of Britain, but here we like really didn't have gay male stand-ups. We had gay female stand-ups earlier because lesbians love going to a place where they sit down comfortably and watch a woman's voice be augmented. But gay guys are always a little bit like, hey, shouldn't that be me? If that person isn't hotter than me or has their genitals tucked up inside of themselves and is pretending to be Petula Clark, why would I look at them? And I think that when I started in stand-up, there wasn't really a place to go. Like, when I started in San Francisco, which was one of the few places that had like a full-time queer performance art and stand-up venue. So like all of the queer headliners were coming through, mostly women. But then there were these men like Scott Capurro, who was famous in England, but like lived in the United States and was not famous here, or Scott Silverman, that like there were a bunch of people who got to do 5 minutes on TV and then they didn't know what to do with them. And that was a problem for women as well. They were really great female queer comics who they would get that 5 minutes, they would get a late night set, and then nowhere for them to go. And it really did start changing in 2013, 2015. Like Las Culturistas did so much to highlight queer voices in comedy. And then on top of it, you had places like Brooklyn and LA where there were audiences who were ready for it, who wanted that perspective. And so when I started in stand-up, there was a notion that as a gay stand-up, my job was to go into a writer's room and write for ladies. And that's really what happened to me professionally, just because I needed to make a living. But I sort of, in a way that some of the gay comedy writers who came before me didn't do, always pushed and was aggressive about trying to make space for myself on camera in stuff. And like it was understood that the natural place for a gay male comic was, as I said, to be writing for women's shows because there weren't as many women in writers' rooms. And it's been interesting as female creators have, and particularly female stars, have taken more seriously working with female writers and voices, that like figuring out the space for gay male writers is interesting. Now there can be something of a notion of like, well, is there a gay male supporting character who needs to be written for? Then we must have one like gay male writer, or is it a show that is like very gay? And I think I have been an exception in that I've worked on a lot of shows. Like when I worked at the Mindy Project, when I started, there were two gay male writers, and that was an unusual thing and was reflective of Mindy like not being too identity based in the way that she was thinking about filling out a writer's room. Sometimes I've worked on super gay shows like Q Force, or a show like Hacks, which, you know, one of the main characters is a bisexual woman, but just is so infused with a queer sensibility and is so much about a person who is like a gay male icon that the writers have always understood it to be a show that must be informed by queer sensibility, and so has several gay male and female writers.
Love the Mindy Project. I'm due for a rewatch, and obviously Hacks is brilliant. We'll get to that a little later on. And we've obviously come a long way. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a long way to go. And we're also up against a lot of our rights being questioned right now. You're very vocal. Do you remain hope-filled and hopeful and fueled to fight? I mean, many people feel defeated right now. How are you maintaining hope?
Because we have to, because like the world's going to keep going and it's going to keep going in a good direction or a bad direction. And we should try to hand it off to people in a better shape than it was handed to us. And I understand feeling tired and dispirited, but also these things are work. Like frequently we are tired and dispirited when we have to make dinner. But if you don't make dinner, you don't have dinner. Or if you order dinner from somewhere else, like it won't be as good and you will have problems with it. And that's how politics works. If you hand it off to somebody else to figure it out for you, it's going to be imperfect. If you do some of the work yourself, you like can at least feel like you had a part in it. So I think that we just have to take that seriously. And also as a gay person, I feel weird because as in the last 10 years, the rights that we got have not been as in question as reproductive rights or the rights of people of color, and that we have a right in this country that has decided that they're not going to talk too much about queer people for now. Well, I mean, they're going to go after trans people as hard as they can. Like, they're trying to lull us into a sense of complacency, and I'm not going to do that.
Beautifully said. I like to speak about building community and, as they say, finding your tribe. Because I didn't really build an LGBTQ community till my late 30s. It was after my divorce. I just was never involved in the scene. I think, I said I felt on the outsides, maybe battled internalized homophobia. Did you seek community early on, or was it something that took you time because you isolated it or felt on the outside, or were you immersed right away?
I think that there is this like libertarian every man for himself bent in America that definitely can get into the heads of gay people, or particularly gay men, particularly white gay men, because I think we're unused to having to deal with group identities. And so want to believe like, I'm different. Yes, I'm attracted to men, but I'm not like them. But like, I think homosexuality is something that must be understood culturally. We need different tools for the life that we lead. And it kind of has to be a hobby. It kind of has to be a thing that you do alongside the other things, or else you're not going to have that community and you're not going to have people who understand those things. And, I pretty soon after coming out found a group of really good friends in Minnesota where I was in law school. And then I've been lucky to find really good friends, but I think that I have searched for it and hungered for it because there is just a level of community and understanding. Like, people who process culture the same, like, it is always interesting when you realize the things that you have in common with other queer people that kind of don't make sense, or the things that like I don't participate in that are like shared in common. Like, millennial gay men love James Bond in a way that is like really interesting to me and is very TNT on Saturday and Sunday based. So not something that I participated in, but when you see these things, like, it does feel beautiful and like a calling, and like I love that shared aspect of culture and sensibility.
So do I. How about comedy community? Do you have a strong community? Is it competitive at all? There's sometimes a weird divide, I think, in this era we are, where many those podcast bros are kind of getting into politics. How do you navigate that?
Well, I mean, I love being a comedian. It really is. Like, when I was in law school, fresh out of the closet and really depressed, I was like, I just want to go somewhere where I can be around interesting people. And comedy has given that to me for decades. That, like, I can go on any random given night and go to a show that I got booked for and not know who's going to be there. And then, like, there was like 6 months when just Robbie Hoffman and I were on every show together. And I just got constant quality Robbie Hoffman time. There are those moments where you see, particularly a queer comic or a female comic, see something or make a joke about something in a way that you hungered for but couldn't find yourself. And it just makes me so happy. I love the sensibility of the people who are my colleagues. And there's always this sense of competition. There's always this sense of, why did they get the thing that I didn't get? But I think over time it softens. Like, over time, now the people who have survived, you're just so lucky to have them around, and they really do feel like family. And, the podcast bros are being political, but I would say that dudes like that in comedy have always been political, have always been in various ways saying, this is real comedy and this is not real comedy. These people have voices that matter and these people don't have voices that matter. And I think what makes it seem more politicized now is that there are other voices that are getting amplified. They are creeped out and weirded out that they are not the only thing anymore. And, I have sympathy for that. But they had much less sympathy in 2007 when the default was that they would have success and I would not.
Again, beautifully said. You're a great speaker. In addition to writing, and you mentioned law school not being a great fit, you wrote for the school paper, you started writing comedy. What was your earliest material drawn from? Was it your personal life? How did you craft your jokes?
It's very interesting because I started stand up like less than 2 years after I came out of the closet. And it did just force me to have a crystallized identity. It forced me to see myself, to present myself as a fully formed gay man. And that was really beneficial to me. Early on, I was like worried that identity was a crutch. Once every other set, I wanted to have a set where I didn't in any way mention my gayness. But then I started to realize that audiences were like confused and uncomfortable by not having this explained to them. And so it did need to be something that I managed, or like there would be uncertainty there. But, I think I've always done a lot of observational comedy because that's a way of like bridging my perceived gap from an audience that may be unlike me. I was just having a lot of sex with strangers at that point in time. So I had a lot of material that was about sex with strangers. But it was just me trying to try on identities and figure out what fits. I mean, that makes it seem like I was in a less certain space. I would say it's better that I was just like crystallizing my identity over time by exploring it with material, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have a new hour. You've been performing Be Fruitful, your new show on the road, and you're heading to the Edinburg Fringe Festival this summer. How precious are you in perfecting an hour? Are you constantly rearranging and testing and writing voice notes? What is that process?
Well, this is very different because I've done headlining sets before. I've done hours a lot. Like I tour a fair amount, but generally when touring, like there is some fluidity to what I'm doing on any given night. I have never recorded an hour special. I didn't get to do a set on Comedy Central until like 2015, which was truly like 14 years into me doing stand up. So at a point in time when like all of my colleagues had. And so I didn't get to submit a half hour until then. And it really, and then Comedy Central rejected my half hour. And it was like very frustrating. There wasn't a place for me. And so I just wasn't pursuing in that direction. It was much like now you can just release like a special on your own much easier. Um, and one of the things is like you keep growing and maturing as you age and like this so Be Fruitful, what I'm doing right now is not just sort of like a straight stand-up hour. It's more of like a structured solo show. It's more of like an Edinburgh show. So it's got a bunch of jokes in it. It's a very funny show, but it's also got more ideas in it, kind of along the lines of what is in my book. And I feel self-conscious about that because it's not just a rollicking fun hour of comedy. And because of that, it has required more preciousness. It has required more thought. As I said, I feel self-conscious about it, but it's also like, this is what you can do. This is what you are good at. Why not do this thing because you can?
Yeah, when I was reading about it, I was wondering if it was kind of similar to like Jacqueline Novak style, how it's almost like a long monologue, almost educational.
I dream of doing what Jacqueline Novak did in Get on Your Knees. Get on Your Knees is composed almost entirely of one-liners while building this larger argument about women's bodies and narrative and everything like that. And, I would hope people would compare what I'm doing to Get on Your Knees. But yeah, like, I, I'm talking about social stuff. I'm talking about myself. I'm trying to, I mean, the basic idea is just, I'm never going to have kids. I'm gay. So there's no religion that really offers me an afterlife. I'm not going to participate in evolution. I'm also very, very fat. So most people are not interested in my genetic material. And so if I am not offered a purpose to my life by religion or science, what is the purpose of my life? And so thinking about that in ways that are tough and aggressive, but funny, and taking the audience on a journey. And the audiences have been really impressively willing to go on that journey with me.
Yeah, it's described as being about religion, evolution, and fruit, and then examining traditionally ignored people and anti fat bias. I mean, on the surface, not a comedic title, but is it almost like a project to get such serious topics in your head, write them down, and form jokes around them? Is it a balance?
Those were already the jokes that I was writing. Like, those were already the jokes that I was writing. Like, as a comic, you're always confronting the stuff that like worries you or is on your mind. And it mostly just started from a place of like, I had jokes that were around these topics. Let's try to figure out why I have these jokes and structure them around together and figure out other things that can like support and expand on it.
And I think many of us, not in the comedy community, we've heard about the Edinburgh Fringe Festival all our life. We've never been, and we got sort of a glimpse in Baby Reindeer.
Yes.
Have you been, and was that accurate? What are you expecting?
I've never been, and it feels overwhelming and terrifying. Like, it's 4,000 shows every night. What does that even mean? What does that even feel like? It's like a mixture of comedy and theater and circus and music. And so I'm excited about just getting to be there and be in the middle of it and be part of it. But like it does also feel like it could be easy for your show to get lost in the process. So I'm just trying to be prepared.
Do you have a place to stay? Does everyone stay in like a big village?
Yes, they're like you can stay in the I don't have a place to stay yet. That is a thing that I really need to figure out. But generally people stay in the dorms at the university there. Like Edinburgh is a big university town, but it's like because there are so many people there just to watch the shows, it is just like finding somewhere to stay for the month is terrible.
And we mentioned all the topics you cover and how those were just naturally subjects you were writing about, but it's also vulnerable material. Do you feel vulnerable at all, or is it easy for you just to put everything on the table?
There is a way that I can be intimidated every time I have to do the show that it is like, oh God, I have to tell more people about this stuff. But that's a good thing. Like that is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like you're supposed to be doing stuff that pushes you. You know, it's like with lifting weights. You were supposed to train to failure. Like you are supposed to, if it doesn't hurt the next day, you didn't do enough. And that is sort of the way I see this. Like there's a way that you always get used to a joke and you get used to material that you do on a regular basis. And there's something nice about having something that does feel still a little raw every time I do it.
Is this something you're hoping to record and document in a special?
Yes. And like we're now at a point where it's just like Netflix makes you pay for your own special out of the money that they give you. Like you can do it on YouTube. You could hope to have like a nice big streamer make it with you. And it's one of the reasons I'm taking it to Edinburgh is to try to get reviews and attention and respect for it so that it will be taken more seriously. But whether they decide to let me in the front door or not, I probably will make a special and figure out some way of distributing it.
Yeah, I've had many comedians on that are just going the YouTube route. Zach Noe Towers and Phoebe Robinson, and even Kathy Griffin and Heather Shaw. Like, it seems like that's sort of where things are moving.
Yeah.
You also talk candidly about your first and only time in love. So, in love once at 50, is this something that you feel just is what it is, or is it something you're longing for? And what made you decide to actually speak about it?
I mean, I'm very good at being alone. I understand being alone. It has been my default state for most of my life. So it's not something that like I'm mad at or anything. But I was just not expecting to, in the middle of my 40s, meet someone and truly have. I guess that was the beginning of my 40s. It's the beginning of my 40s. Um, like, I just didn't see it coming, and then when it happened, it was very confusing because for a number of reasons I talk about in the show, I didn't know how to talk to anyone around me about it, and I didn't feel comfortable with it. But I simultaneously was really surprised by how natural and wonderful it felt, and I do think that having that experience made me finally understand what a partner for me would look like, what partnership for me looks like. Um, and it was wonderful and scary and in the end sad in its way, but also wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that. I know you also covered the 1984 Tony Awards. That's the year I was born. What's a tease about why that was impactful?
Oh, I mean, this is one of those iconic moments that must be discussed. I probably should do an old gaze about it. So that was the year that Stephen Sondheim put out Sunday in the Park with George. And Sunday in the Park with George has a score that is like very, very innovative. It tries to be pointillist the way that George Seurat's art is pointillist. And so it doesn't sound like music is supposed to, but like the song Bit by Bit Putting It Together, which you may have heard, is from that musical and is, of course, very catchy. And then the same year, Jerry Herman put out La Cage aux Folles, which is The Birdcage. And they were up against each other for best score. And then instead of like greatest genius of the Broadway stage Pulitzer Prize winner Sondheim winning, Jerry Herman won. And Jerry Herman came up to the stage and said, "There's been a rumor going around that the simple hummable tune is no longer welcome on Broadway. Well, it's alive and living at the Palace," which is the greatest act of gay on gay violence that has ever been committed. He got up there and basically like tried to shove a knife in Stephen Sondheim. And I think for me, that is like a very interesting tension between queerness and gayness and like these desires to exist outside of the traditions that exist already and then find a place for us within those traditions. And like those guys represent two sides of that coin to me. But also in Sunday in the Park with George, like Sondheim has a song Children in Art where he talks about like the two ways that you can project yourself into the future are children in art. And I think that that is like very much a theme of the show.
You're teaching me. Yeah, that would be good for a clip. You should do that. Now moving to your book, which I really loved, and I read it the year it came out. One of my favorites. It's been about 8 years. You've been busy writing TV shows, a new hour, touring all over the place. Do you write for pleasure, like essays, and do you think you have another book in you?
The thing is you can put like just writing essays and stuff like that. I used to do more stuff like that, and I think it scratched an itch that I wanted to put into like things that were less reactive. So I am working on a new book proposal. Yeah, like I need to get that done so that I can sell a
Well, it
book.
sounds like The Old Gaze could be a book of lessons, possibly.
I mean, the thing is there's always the inclination to do that thing that is like very quick, like that is like very much turning around a thing that you have that is successful. And like I understand that. Like somebody was like, it should be a coffee table book, and I was like, God, it would make a hell of a coffee table book. But the book that I want to write is like very much related, but not like perfectly on point. I'm putting together a proposal for a book about like camp over the last 70 years, and sort of the way that it has changed American culture in good ways and bad ways.
Very interesting. And that leads to my next question because you are a big pop culture guy. Where are you now in the culture? Are you immersed in the current culture? Do you dive back to the early aughts and 90s or 80s? You know, Madonna was just in Times Square yesterday. Her new era is sort of aimed at gay people with grinder ads all over the place. Where are you now?
Well, you know, my head is always slightly stuck in the past, especially now that I'm older. It's very difficult for me to remember that 2015 was 10 years ago. The honest place for where my head is in pop culture is after watching Survivor 50, there were like 7 seasons I hadn't watched. And so I was like, I need to learn who these new people are. So, you know, watching Survivor from 2021 is really where my head is. And also recently, about a year ago, I was like, I must understand Scandival. So I consumed all of Vanderpump Rules, which I believe is the greatest story that America as a culture will tell. It is our Iliad. But like, there's also a way that like one of my old people things is like there isn't really good television comedy right now. Things that I work on aside, like there are good television comedies. The Rise and Fall of Reggie Dinkins is really good. Four Seasons is good, but like I miss funny comedy, and I think my hunger for that is real. And you know, I think one of the great things about Heated Rivalry was that it gave us a taste of monoculture. It gave us this moment where the girls and gays were all watching the same thing and we all got to talk about it. And I miss that.
Yeah, so do I. And I also miss Chelsea Lately, which is where I first learned about you. And you were a big part of that show. And it was such a defining period, that era. It was sort of pre streaming. I've had Chris Frangiola on the show, Sarah Colonna, Ross Matthews, Margaret Cho. You were famously fired from that show, but you remain on good terms with Chelsea. You were on her podcast. When you look back at that show, how do you define that era? Because it was such a time capsule. Do you appreciate it?
You know, I think it was a simpler time. I think that good and bad choices were being made. I think Chelsea did so much to amplify queer voices and women's voices and like give late night comedy a distinctively like female bent. Um, but I also think that comedy in 2007 or 2009 was different in a lot of bad ways, in that like reprocessing old cliches was really easy and was happening a lot. And I would like to think that we can approach comedy with a little more subtlety and complexity. Lonnie Love actually had a pilot where she was trying to do, like in like 2016 or 2017, she was trying to do a panel show that was a little bit more thoughtful, and it didn't end up going anywhere. But I was, you know, I had such optimism for it. And it is like one of the things I miss about it is just that it was joke based, where now podcasts just are so long and you don't necessarily get the sort of like speed and wit that you got on Chelsea Lately. And I think I do end up turning to British panel shows a lot more for that kind of like, you know, sparky repartee.
Yeah, it's complex because some people think of that era as mean humor, insensitive humor, and then we went through a period of people getting canceled and being ultra sensitive, and it almost seems like we're edging back into more I don't want to say mean, but edgy comedy. Like when you look back at some of the jokes, are you conflicted? I was talking to Sarah Colon and she was like, our hearts were good and people were laughing. It seems like 10 years later, people have a problem with some of the jokes. How do you feel?
I mean, like, I definitely think that like some bad and cheap choices were made. Like, comedy goes in wrong directions all the time. I like mean jokes. I like roast jokes. I think jokes about celebrities are fair game. Like, they have put themselves, they are making a living from our attention. So they can't really be mad that some of our attention isn't nice. But I also think that when not everybody's voices are getting amplified, when not everybody is getting to tell the joke, like that can be rough. I also think that there were ways that we had some communities that we felt were just like easy targets that aren't going to get mad, or like their anger doesn't mean enough. Um, that's troubling. I mean, Sarah Silverman had a joke that she told like 10, 15 years ago that I'm sure she wouldn't tell anymore, but it was basically little people being mad at her for using a slur about little people. And they were like, why wouldn't you use like a racial slur with the same comfort that you use this word? And her response was, because I'm not scared of little people. But she uses the slur or use the slur. She does not tell this joke anymore. But the idea is like, are you scared? Like, are you worried about what saying this thing will mean? And I think that it's really bad and cruel to be like, but I can get away with this. And like, I had to experience so much anti-gay comedy at the beginning of my career because people thought they could get away with it. And like one of the results of that, I remember being at a show in truly 2015 in New York where like everyone who got on stage said faggot. And this was a show, like, this is back in the time when, like, there would be one woman on a show, and, like, the woman did not say faggot, but every man who got on that stage said faggot. And then I watched as the two faggots in the audience got up and left before I got to do my set. And just sort of realizing in that moment in a very, like, stark way, these people are driving my audience out of these spaces. These people, by telling these jokes, are telling people who would be more inclined to like my material, you're not welcome here. And so I want jokes to be transgressive. I want jokes to be sharp. I want jokes to hurt. But I also think that many of the things that people behave as though they are transgressive are really just hack jokes that we have heard a bunch before, trying to let some people know that they don't matter as much as other people.
Thanks for sharing that. It's a delicate balance because I know Sarah's talked a lot about like stuff she wouldn't say anymore, but I remember that joke and I think it was her delivery that made it funny. I didn't feel like she was being mean. So yeah, I don't want people to beat themselves up over it because it was a different time and I think I don't some of the jokes still hold up. We're just in a different era.
Well, but also I think we just need to have space for people to change. And I think Chelsea and Sarah and so many great comics have Patton Oswalt have done a great job of being like, oh, I have learned something. I'm going to evolve. And I think just wanting to say this person is bad and they are irredeemable is useless. It's not productive. It's like anytime Sarah Silverman says something that is in any way controversial, you will see the blackface episode of the Sarah Silverman Project. And like she has talked about that and has processed it and said it was a terrible choice. And it's like if we don't give people the space to improve, they're not going to improve. And like we have seen what happens when people decide to like shove their heels in.
Yeah, and that leads me to, and we can cut any of this out if you want, but bridging gaps, political, social divides that we have. It's very divisive time right now, but some people, I think you have to go by their heart. And one person that I know we both enjoy, and I've listened to most of her podcasts for more than a decade now, is Heather McDonald. And she never talks politics, but you can tell she leans a certain way and like supporting Spencer Pratt. But she also seems like she has a very good heart. How do you balance that?
That's a really hard question. Like this is an interesting thing to be talking about on a podcast because I haven't directly talked to Heather about this because I don't know how to talk to Heather about it. But I think the thing is like generally people have different opinions and they are allowed. Heather generally knows what my opinions are and I respect hers. Like we had a little bit of a conversation after she had Cheryl Hines on the show because Cheryl is her old friend and she knows her really well, but also platforming her is to some extent platforming the stuff that her husband has been saying. And so, like we had a conversation about it. And uh that was that. But I think Spencer Pratt is to my mind a dangerous part of a dangerous thing that is happening in American politics. And um I think getting anywhere close to this being somebody who is a participant in our political discourse who's being taken seriously is bad. But also, part of democracy is everybody gets to have their own opinion. And there's also a way that I think trying to push the idea of deplatforming has been bad because it gave people the idea that some of these things are like secret truths that people are trying to hide from them. And I think the best way of, I think speech combats speech. And I think when people put bad ideas out there, they should have to stand by them and have them be criticized. I really don't agree with Heather and like being so excited about Spencer. But like, we'll probably have a conversation about that. But like, it doesn't change the fact that she's a person who I know and love and will always know and love, I mean, like my mom voted for Steve Hilton. Like we fight about that stuff all the time. Like she didn't vote for Trump, and that makes me happy. But like she's conservative, and like I don't know what like she's allowed her opinions.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, same people in my family, close friends of mine. I think again, you know their part and what they mean, and plus, like I think I enjoyed listening to Heather too because she's just so fun and like she recently had Wendy McClendon Covey and Heather Shaw and Jamie Lee. It's like it's a different beast compared to someone else I want to ask about. And we can cut this, but you have been vocal on Twitter about it or X. Winnie Cummings, who I listened to her podcast for years, loved her memoir, listened to every episode, and had to stop probably a year and a half ago because I was just like, who is this person? You've known her for 20 years. Is this her real colors? Has she always been this person?
I don't know. Like one of the reasons that she was somebody, I thought that two things that she did the last two Januaries were dangerous. Like were using her platform in a way that was dangerous and was like moving from political advocacy into something that seemed a whole lot more callous and opportunistic. I don't necessarily like at the time I did not think these were actually her beliefs or opinions. Now I wonder whether I misunderstood what was going on and if she is like not just doing this in like a callous and opportunistic way, but like last year she was like racing around the places that had been on fire with a sword because she had decided that unhoused people had been causing the fires and she was going to get them. And she was going into places like where active fires were going on, where her being there could put her in danger, other people in danger, and then the people who had to rescue them in danger. That was scary. And then this last January, she had made some comments that were critical of feminism and vaccinations and trans people on Joe Rogan, and I thought that that was really creepy. And then on Threads, she was just trying to sort of like coast on the accusations of anti-Semitism against Miss Rachel, which I think are ridiculous, to try to get some followers. And I just thought that that was an extremely calloused thing to do, and also leveraging a thing that is really scary and dangerous and involves people, innocent people dying to get some Threads followers just felt really gross to me. And I thought that somebody needed to point that out. As I said earlier, people get to have their opinions, but I think that they should have to put their identity behind it and deal with criticism. And so I criticized her.
Thank you for sharing. You've been so generous with your time. I'm going to try to fit all these in the last 10 minutes, so I'll be fast. Fashion Police. Again, a lot of people think that was a mean era. I loved it. I watched all the time. You wrote for it. Melissa has said it couldn't happen anymore. Could it?
Like, I don't think so, but I also think that there is a way that you could, I mean, even Joan evolved what she did. Even Joan, by the time I was there, would like not make a fat joke about Adele. And like fat jokes had been her stock in trade when in the 1980s. And I think it needs to be something other than just complimenting people, but we allow criticism of movies and television. Why shouldn't we allow criticism of the fashion that these stars are getting attention for that is a business? Like, why can't that be criticized with jokes?
Of course, we need to touch on Hacks. Beautiful finale, just wrapped after 5 seasons. You've been writing on it, won Emmys for it. You also co-wrote the Montecito episode, which I think is going to be, I would hope is going to be submitted for Emmys with Cherry Jones and Leslie Bibb. How did you come up with that premise, and how many people were writing on that? And did you have Cherry and Leslie in mind?
Okay, so we had a hole in in the season. We had an episode like in the middle towards the end that we needed to figure out, and it was part of this larger journey of getting Deborah to her Madison Square Garden show. And so we landed upon the idea that finding the correct outfit was the story for the episode. And I sort of pitched this idea of this Carol Burnett outfit, and then like somebody pitched like maybe it was like another comedian, like an Ellen and Portia kind of thing, and that started to take shape. And then I was like, what if we were trying to figure out in what way Deborah was trying to operate them. And then when we landed upon it's a lesbian farce, like we had been talking for years about the fact that so many people thought that the relationship between Deborah and Ava was ultimately romantic. And so the notion in this final season of having an episode where we explore that idea without actually, going into it sincerely was really, really fun. And then after that, it was just so much fun. Like Paul, I believe, came with the crystallized idea of Cherry Jones and Leslie Bibb. I remember him distinctly being like Leslie Bibb. And I think he also said Cherry Jones, but like that really helped Bridget, Andrew, and I understand who these characters were and what their voices were. And it was really like the luxury of writing the episode to those characters or to those actors and then getting those actors, but then also having them hit it out of the park and really sink their teeth into it so much more than we imagined. I mean, Cherry Jones, magnificent and great, but like watching Leslie Bibb was just one of the great joys of my life.
It's being predicted that that episode could, or the season itself could sweep like the guest actor nominations, I think deservedly so. And another one in episode 9, Laurie Metcalf. Oh my God, one scene, she just blows me away. She comes up so much in this podcast. Did you get to work or witness her at all?
No, not at all. But like I do loudly yell the name Laurie Metcalf in the film Stop That Train. Like, she's a remarkable talent. One of the worst things that has happened in my life was her losing the Oscar for Lady Bird. Yes, Allison Janney was amazing, but I like Laurie Metcalf in Lady Bird encapsulated a certain Sacramentan sensibility that I have never seen anywhere else. And I love it. But it was just having these heavy hitters come in and destroy has always been the real joy. I mean, Ann Dowd in Antarian makeup from Star Trek in episode 2 was just coming up with an idea that ridiculous, and then getting someone as talented as her to come in is just the greatest joy.
And of course, Meg Stalter, I think one of the most unique voices in comedy right now, just announced for Oh Mary. How was it working with her? And will you see Oh Mary?
Yes, I mean, like I've only seen it with Cole, and like there have been so many people who I really wanted to see, but I think Meg will be amazing and bring really destructive energy to it, and I cannot wait to see her sing cabaret songs. But like one of the great things about Paul, Jen, and Lucia is that they love comedy, and they have always done such a great job of getting comics on the show. Like before I was a writer, they just wrote a little part for me and I got to come be on the show. They understand the comedy voice and sensibility of these people so well, and particularly Pat Regan on the staff would just periodically speak perfectly in the voice of Kayla, Meg Stalter's character, in a way that was transcendent. And, I think whether it's Robbie Hoffman or Meg Stalter or Paul himself, like having a sense of voice, like it's so fun because that's what the show is about. The show is about Ava being able to like use and support and augment Deborah's voice. And then the show did it so well for so many comics.
I mean, the perfect finale, so meaningful, so well rated. It's going to, I'm sure, sweep a lot of awards. But the other show and actress that comes up pretty much every episode, other than Laurie Metcalf, is my all-time favorite show, The Comeback. What are you making of the Jean and Lisa battle?
I mean, it's devastating. There's a chapter in my book about The Comeback, like, and the note, like, that Lisa Kudrow lost both series, like both seasons, to Julia Louis-Dreyfus is like ridiculous to me. Like, it's so sad. Not that Julia Louis-Dreyfus isn't amazing. And then also the thing that always made me so mad is that Julia Louis-Dreyfus, the second time, it was for Veep, for which Julia Louis-Dreyfus won like a bunch of times. And I was like, God, really? Couldn't she have just not gotten one? And like, there is the temptation to feel that way about Jean this season, except like, Jean Smart's just never been better than she was this season. And it really is this culmination. And however much fun it was to write this season and to work on that finale, the things that make that finale resonant and perfect are the faces of Hannah Einbinder and Jean Smart. They are the quiet moments. It is Jean Smart like getting that notebook out of her bag and like, you know, the heavy lifting was on her and she pulled it off. And like, it's very hard because Valerie Cherish is one of the greatest creations of television comedy. But of course, like I'm in the corner for Jean.
Well, fortunately, I think Jean and Lisa don't really care about this trophy. It's just us fans really stressing about it. All right, a few more of your projects. We'll just do a rapid fire. Platonic, it's going into season 3. I've watched every episode. Really enjoy that show. Rose Byrne, just dramatic and comedy all around. She's brilliant. How is it working with that cast?
It's really fun. Like everyone, like cast and crew are people that the showrunners Nick Stoller and Francesca Del Banco love and love working with. So I've never been on a set that felt homier than that show. Like it's really, really wonderful. And Rose Byrne and Seth Rogen are the lowest drama, most talented people that you can possibly work with. Rose Byrne is just so chill. She's just so good at comedy. And then you see her go off and do something like If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, or, you know, her Broadway, like she might win a Tony before we start shooting the show again. It's like very cool and very exciting to get to work with people at that level. And then the other thing that's so cool is my friend Luke McFarland, who has been frequently cast as Hot Guy, is so good at comedy and really like Nick and Francesca and the writers just completely understand how to nail that character and give him the funniest things to do. And it's always fun to watch.
Loved him since Brothers and Sisters. A League of Their Own you worked on, Gone Too Soon. Brilliant show. What do you make of, do you think that's going to stand the test of time? I do. And that's such a brilliant cast. What do you make of that cancellation?
It was really sad because one of the amazing things about working on that show was getting to talk to people who had been in the original League in the 1940s, talk to people who had been in the original movie in the 1990s, and then work with, and I was in like an early version of The Room, but to get to work with Abby and the people who were going to make this episode and just seeing queer women and their relationship to sports at various points in time, and to realize just how gay that early League was, just how gay that shoot in 1992 was. And then to be able to make those things much more explicit in the series and to also acknowledge and deal with the segregation of that league, it was really awesome. And there have been so many things that I got to work on that I didn't realize the impact of them while I was doing them. And to have people reflect back what A League of Their Own has meant to them is really cool.
Two more. Bros. It was such a moment, that film. It was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. It came out, didn't do that great. It got backlash, I think, unnecessarily. But I think people are coming around and appreciating it more and more. Billy has a new memoir. Do you find that to be the case? Do people approach you? Is it similar to like Girls, where now 10 years later, people love Girls and understand the characters more?
I mean, I don't think that many people have still seen it. People who have seen it frequently love it or just had a good time watching it. Like, getting to watch it at the Toronto International Film Festival with like hundreds of people in an auditorium was like one of the greatest experiences of my life. Just sort of like, just we don't get to watch a comedy with a group of people anymore. It's why people need to go to Stop That Train in theaters June 12th. But uh yeah, like I was on set every day for that because I was doing punch up, and it was an amazing cast that I met so many people. T.S. Madison, Simone, who's in Stop That Train. Like I got to meet really awesome like truly last month I was in Minneapolis for my law school reunion, and one of the guys who was in the movie was in the touring company of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and he was in the gay bar in Minneapolis. But just casting a movie entirely with queer people created a community that I will get to have for the rest of my life. And so I wish it had been a box office hit, but what I got out of that movie was so much more than that.
Yeah, I think it'll stand the test of time. And we've mentioned a lot. So let's close with Stop That Train. It's everywhere on social media. The cast is just dynamite. Everyone's in it. And it seems like a throwback. We don't make these types of comedies. What was it like working with that such huge ensemble of comedians?
Well, I mean, what was amazing about it is they shot it so quickly on such a low budget. Most like I shot in the offices where they shoot Drag Race. Like they were doing it on a dime, but Adam Schenkman is a great director and a great director of comedies, and there are some musical numbers in it, and a great director of musicals. But like just what a glorious job they did of picking some of the greats from Drag Race and then just grabbing a bunch of comedy people who love comedy and putting them in a very stupid, very silly movie that is inspired by things like Airplane and the Abrams Brothers movies, inspired by like Mel Brooks movies, and a campy take on those 1970s disaster films. It's dumb, but like it's exactly the sort of thing you want to take an edible and a half and go and just have the best hour and a half of your life.
I will be there. I'm looking forward to it. Guy, this was such a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much. I'm so sorry it was so hard for us to get this to happen, but it was a really lovely experience.
Thank you, Guy Branum. Make sure to follow him on Instagram. Obviously, watch Hacks. Follow him on his tour as he's always traveling and performing. If you're in Scotland, go see him at that Edinburg Fringe Festival. I always slip up when I try to say that word, but Edinburgh, I don't know. Come on. And I am part Scottish. Mostly Irish and Scottish. I'll make my way over there eventually. Hey, maybe I'll hang out with Rosie. That would be my dream in Ireland. All right, my friends, Tangled in song. What song am I tangled in this week? Of course, it is Pride, so we're going to keep on the theme of that. Last week, we talked about Same Love by Macklemore, and this week, my first double dose of an artist in this Tangled in Song segment, and I am bringing it back to my birthday friend, Miranda Lambert. Also, my favorite restaurant in Nashville. We always make sure to go to Casa Rosa, the best Tex-Mex food. They have this awesome salmon taco salad with cilantro lime dressing and the chips and the dip trio with the guac. I can't say enough. I always go there, sit at the bar, just have a good margarita and snack on the best food there. So definitely make sure to go to Miranda Lambert's restaurant if you're in Nashville. But the song I want to talk about, we're taking it back to 2011 with the opening track from her For the Record album, one of my favorites. It's called All Kinds of Kinds. The title kind of explains it, but it's about, hey, the world is a melting pot. We need all kinds of kinds to survive and to celebrate and to thrive. And if there wasn't a song fitting for Pride, this is it. Although she has performed a song for Queer Eye, the series. Remember that season that she was with the Queer Eye folks when they were in Texas and she performed Y'all Means All? That's also a great Pride song. But I want to talk about All Kinds of Kinds. The lyrics basically take you through a bunch of characters. So we have an acrobat, the human cannonball, the tattooed lady, congressman with a closet full of skeletons who wears dresses on Friday nights. We have Phyllis, who is a pharmacist. We have a wedding beneath the big top tent with barkers, clowns, and elephants. And then the chorus goes, ever since the beginning, to keep the world spinning, it takes all kinds of kinds. That says it all. We need all kinds of kinds. We need to stop separating. We need to stop dividing everyone and putting them in these categories of good and bad. Of course, we don't have to agree with everyone, and we do not accept hate. but we don't condemn people for simply being different or not having the same beliefs. I know we're in a very divisive time right now. There's jagged lines dividing everyone. Of course, we're not standing for hate. We're not standing for anyone trying to take people's rights away from them and make them second-class citizens and alienate them from the rest of the world. But we do accept differences, knowing that we are different as well and are not going to agree with everyone, and everyone's not going to agree with us. And again, the lyrics also go, some point the finger, let ignorance linger. If they'd look in the mirror, they'd find that ever since the beginning, to keep the world spinning, it takes all kinds of kinds. So keep that with you this Pride Month and beyond, and give Miranda Lambert's 2011 album For the Record a listen. All of her records, they're all brilliant. She's a fantastic songwriter. And I do want to mention one other song on that record, Nobody's Fool. It's probably my top 5 songs of Miranda's, and I don't think she's ever performed it live. Great country rock song, and I want to hear it. So Miranda, there's another request for you. A few weeks ago, I talked about your song Running Just in Case, which I don't think you performed. So those are the 2 songs that I would love to see on stage at some point. And I appreciate all of Miranda's work for animals, of course. As I hold my dog right now, she does so much for rescue leagues, and I just think the world of her. And again, we have the same birthday. All right, my friends, I will be back next week with another pride-filled guest. Until then, please follow me, like, rate, and subscribe. Keep up to date with me. Connect with me. Send me a message. I love hearing from you. Until then, you take care of yourselves. I will see and speak with you soon.